All right, everybody. Is it warm enough in here? All right, so let's start up. Let's see if we can push it along. So let's call this meeting to order. Hi, everyone. Let's do a pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Let's do a roll round. So I observe 5 council members and myself present. We received an email from Council Member George Mansfield that he has an illness in his family and may be able to return in time, but he's excused. Okay, so first order of business is public comment. There is a public hearing tonight, so just to remind people, if you want to discuss the item that's in the public hearing, which is the budget, wait for that public hearing. If you have comments on something other than the budget, this is the time to present that material. So if you have a public comment, you get up to 3 minutes, and on the list first is Teresa Kraft. Please.
Saw a lot of people in shorts today. Wow, what a weekend for the city of Beacon. Glorious weather, a great bonfire event, and great vibes on Main Street. I talked to hundreds, if not thousands of people this weekend. Many strolled our Main Street by chance, and some were looking for the incredible venues around the city. I could not keep up with and count how many tourists told me they were staying in an Airbnb and an ADU just around the block, up the hill, or near the river. But what I can tell you is those numbers far exceed the numbers registered in our city books. Say what you will, but the proof was on the streets. And judging from the overflowing trash receptacles located up and down Main Street, we as a municipality and host to this influx of visitors should do a better job at greeting our company and our family residents. Where are those new trash cans? I know I always say I'm on the edge with safety concerns, but it's the inevitable that I fear most. Reading recent syndicated publications describing the city as being known for having laws on the books that are simply not enforced is cringeworthy. One crucial component is being overlooked: the explosion of newly constructed and in the pipeline accessory dwelling units are really short-term rentals and future Airbnbs. While you're voting tonight to approve a new budget, we need to be looking into expanding our emergency services and increasing our highway crew. So many heads are retiring in the same stretch. We need to watch the cracks. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is signed up to make a general comment. Lori, Dick?
Good evening. I'm just here because I wanted to thank the council and the mayor for writing and hopefully passing this resolution in support of the Clean Slate Bill, and hopefully making that statewide law. The organization I work for, the Legal Aid Society, has actually spent the last 5+ years attempting to spread the word about the current ceiling provisions that are in the law. And I'm learning from this resolution that you all have done such a good job writing that apparently only 0.5% of those who are eligible for the sealing of their criminal convictions have actually had them sealed in the last 5 years. So that's a crucial component of the Clean Slate Bill, which would improve upon the current sealing statute, which is law in New York, is that this Clean Slate Bill would make that sealing automatic after a certain period of time has passed after someone's conviction, so long as the conviction qualifies and there are no new criminal convictions, or I may not have all the details correct, maybe even new arrests disqualify a person. I also wanted to speak from my history with Beacon Prison Action and the Beacon Prison Rides program here in volunteer project here in Beacon, that I know through my work with so many Beaconites that we have a shared understanding of our shared humanity and that humanity is not removed by one mistake, one criminal conviction, that one's need to contribute to society, to earn a living is not removed from that. And I think the Clean Slate Bill helps to honor that. So thank you all.
Thank you. Sarah Alpert, and again, on something other than the budget.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm also here to thank the City Council for considering the proposal on to support the Clean Slate Initiative. I don't have any prepared statements, but I'll just say that I know there's 2.3 million New Yorkers that have some kind of conviction history, and by automatically sealing and expunging that, it would allow for economic opportunity, inclusion in society in ways that are really meaningful. I work for an organization called Hudson Link for Higher Education in Prison, and we have over 1,500 alumni that have worked on getting college degrees. We've awarded over 850 college degrees, and 1,500 of our alumni have come home and are working and living in the community. And oftentimes it's heartbreaking to hear how many people have been denied jobs or have gotten jobs and then gotten kicked out of their jobs and told that they no longer have a job there just based on their conviction history alone. I think we are all more than the worst thing we've ever done in our lives, and people that have served their time, have been deemed eligible to come back to society, whatever that means, are still being perpetually punished in our society and are unable to economically support their families in ways that all of us would like to be able to. So by supporting this resolution, it will help to support and show the state government that they should be passing this on a statewide level. And yeah, there's just tons of people that I love and care about that this would fundamentally make their lives a lot easier. And give them the second chance that we all would want. So thank you guys for your support, and that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. That's it for the list. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to make a public comment other than on a budget item? Okay. Ben, anyone in the electronic audience?
If you are on Zoom and you'd like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand option at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're on a phone, you can press *9 and you will need to press *6 to unmute once called upon. If you're watching on YouTube, you will need to join the Zoom by visiting beaconny.gov. Right now, we have no hands raised.
Okay. So let's do our public hearing. So now we're going to have a public hearing on the budget. We need a motion and a second to open the public hearing, or only to close it?
Open. Motion and a second to open as well.
Okay.
Motion to open this public hearing
Second.
On
the budget, for the proposed budget for 2023.
Okay. Do we need a vote as well as a motion and a second, Drew?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. And by the way, our city attorney, Drew Gambles, is on electronically. Hey, Drew.
Hi, everyone.
And who's going to introduce it, or are we going to talk about that, or we've already done so and we just received the public input?
I can give just a little background if you want.
That'd be great.
So the 2023 operating budget was presented at a meeting on October 3rd. We've had at least 2 workshops, maybe 3 now. We've had the 6 major asset departments and staffing departments come in and do presentations. In that initial presentation, we had anticipated that the public hearing would be tonight. Our only requirement is we have to pass the budget by the end of the year. So our last meeting is December 19th. The budget, we've gone through a number of workshops on it. It basically is posted on the website and has, I think we've had one change, which was a missing salary. And I think Susan will be here next week again to workshop other items and talk about the summary of changes that she had. So And again, this isn't the capital program, this is the operating budget that runs from January 1 to December 31st.
Okay. Any other comments from council before we open it up? All right. On the list for people to make a public comment on the budget in the public hearing, Teresa Kraft. You're up first. Yep.
I expect you'll pass this budget. Listening to the presentations and reviewing the documentations for the proposed 2023 budget, I have faith in Susan Tucker and more in our city numbers geek. Why are there no monies in the Greenway Trail line item? The chicken permits are flatlining, and this city can make a lot more money in parking tickets and driving violations. This budget will go into the history books as a great major infrastructure investment for our water, sewer, dams, and road rebuilding and improvements, and hopefully for a new firehouse that looks as if it belongs and pays tribute to our historic factory city and brickworks, and not just another cookie-cutter box that has become the new norm in Beacon. Thank you.
Thank you. And Phil Stamatis? Again, on the budget, right?
Good evening. First time, long time. I'd like to thank all of you for sitting at the table, for all the time and service that you've given to the city already. I'd also like to thank all of you for the proposed funding for continuation of the compost drop-off program. We are just shy of 30,000 pounds collected in the 6-month span for just $4,000. It's been said that one of the biggest costs in our budget was labor. I find it somewhat interesting that a city that relies so heavily on volunteers has labor issues, as well as the recurring conversation that city employees don't get paid much and they can't even live in our city. Just a thought. I witness this problem regarding that almost weekly. There's a small piece of land owned and managed by the city right outside my house that gets cut, the grass gets cut on a weekly basis, whether it needs it or not. City truck, hauling city equipment, just comes, does the job, regardless of if it's needed or not. I urge our department heads, which I'm sure they do, to just clean up all these little tasks that just are seen wasteful for time and resources. Back to the budget and energy. I'm concerned about some of the items regarding electricity that are on the proposed budget. Recently, we lost our fixed rate electric with the Columbia Utility. They found a loophole in order to terminate our contract. I was hoping to, which I think all of the city and its residents benefited from that fixed rate deal. I'm curious if there's an update from the legal department, if litigation or class action with the other municipalities against Columbia has been launched, and where we are on that. As I said, I'm very concerned with how those electricity costs are budgeted moving forward. Now we have back to a variable rate, and we've seen that that market's been volatile. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in the physical public want to make a comment on the budget? Tell us who you are, because you're not on the list.
Clark Gebman, 2 Wilson Street. Good evening, folks. I think the most important thing I could say to the council tonight is on the topic, the budget, of course, but on the intellectual capital that is expended in terms of good governance. And, you know, anyone can make a list of the things one could do to make government more open and more responsive, and that can happen in any community. But this is Beacon, and we are under the pressures of having valuable land. And with that comes inevitably every type of character you could imagine. I'll count myself as one. And when we match the issues of the day as to protecting the asset of the city I like to think of the city as a collector of taxes per lineal foot of street. The cost of improvements in street furniture, whether it be sewer lines, water, is too expensive, the classic understanding of the way cities operate, to let go of much greater potential property taxation. So a classic example might be, was it wise to have subsidized housing on 9W by the train station, when in fact, and I went back and I said this 20 years ago, but regardless, you know, maybe it should have been like a hotel. You know, maybe it should be an office space. The whole point is commercial. If you're concerned about affordable housing, affordable taxation goes hand in hand. And here you have a part-time assessor. And you have a historical reference point of a planner in progeny by name, I don't know if by relation, that goes back 20, 30 years of basically Westchester influence deciding, you know, kind of like how Beacon looks. And so I think you're woefully short on paid staff that sits in the building and communicates with the public. Planning department, building department, assessment. These real estate related issues squander the bounty of the location of Beacon through poor decision making. Not personalizing this to each of you, but you're in a system of, well, this is what we do, rather than maybe this is what we should do. And so what escapes from that is the private consultants that budgets go into the millions, but often, or maybe it doesn't, maybe it's only hundreds of thousands, I doubt it, but certainly over time. And the point is there's no real definitive allegiance and cadence of a staffer who reports to you, council. And when we talk about council, I think as though that we need to, none of you were elected, and you never really had elections last time. It was, I mean, you know, let's be honest. Because, you know, you have to be super committed for some reason or another. Maybe you don't have an agenda, maybe you do. But the healthiness of competition over a salary for a council person can bring out a more enhanced duty to really understand, to dig deep, and to confront. And the confrontation should be here, not to be mean, but to be intellectually curious.
15 seconds.
And I don't think the budget reflects that, and I think it really is something that you really ought to think about, because the deficiencies show through. Maybe not to the average person in the public, but the person who loves government like myself and understands it. I can see very, very clearly that you really need help. Otherwise, it becomes into this thing of personalization that you totally misunderstand.
Your time has lapsed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else in the physical public? If not on the budget, anyone online? Ben?
There are no hands raised online.
What would the council want? Shall we entertain a motion to close the public hearing?
Do we know, Chris, what Susan is talking about next week? Is there anything substantial? We also have extra time, so I'm thinking maybe we keep it open I know we have in past years. But I'm curious first about whether or not we think the stuff that we brought up next week will actually mean that there'll be stuff that we want the public to be able to give feedback on.
You asked for two things from Susan. One is an analysis of what it would do to tax rates if we went to cap. And you also asked for the cost of police radar equipment that says your speed is. So we will have both of those for next meeting.
I still have a few things too for the next workshop.
I believe we were also going to discuss what to do with the budget line item around studies. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not limiting it to those two things. That's what you asked for, and that's what we're preparing for. You can bring up anything else that you want to bring up, and Susan will be here.
I'm inclined to keep the public hearing open. We're continuing to talk about the budget. There's time before we pass the budget. And I would like to, if there's more public input, it would be great to hear it.
Hey, I've got a question for Drew. Drew, can we limit future comments to changes that we might make, or do we just keep it open?
I would recommend keeping it open. At the time of the next public hearing, you can encourage all new comments, and with a focus on the new materials. But if you're going to just adjourn it, then it'll be open generally, and you can't exclude other comments.
Okay. So I get a motion?
Yeah, motion to adjourn the public hearing to our November 21st meeting.
Second?
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Okay. Reports. Who wants to start? Oh, let's start this way.
Okay.
Right? And
Sure.
then we'll go around this way.
Why not? Speaking of open government, I was going to try and give a short update on where we are at with participatory budgeting. As the council knows, we set aside $10,000 in the annual operating budget this year to go through a participatory budgeting process. We decided that we wanted to engage the Beacon High School as a partner in this, and I'm happy to report that that process has been moving forward. Chris and I spent the day on Friday, October 28th, the whole day, talking to 11 class groups of the Beacon High School senior class. We gave them some 101 about how the city operates, and then spent the bulk of each period beginning to workshop initial ideas that students had about how that money could be spent. I'll say anecdotally that I think we had some really great conversations and heard some really good initial ideas. I'm not going to bias the council now about which ideas were most exciting, but you'll hear more of them. And currently, students have been asked to fill out a simple questionnaire of what they would like to see $10,000 spent on to improve the city. And then Erin Hadelan, who's the teacher that we are liaising with, who's amazing, and does the, these are all the participation in government or economics classes of the senior class, so they have some context for this. Erin and I are going to help support some enthusiastic students in developing their ideas further. There will be an anonymous ballot of the developed ideas that the senior class will vote on, of which they think are the best to move forward. And then the exciting thing will be on our December 12th workshop. We're going to have those students come and present on their ideas. And we will take a vote on the last meeting of the year, December 19th, on officially funding some of those ideas. So we're thinking of this as a pilot and a bit of an experiment, but I'm just excited that this process is moving forward. This is part of a 8-speaker series that the participation in government class is going to engage with us, the city, on monthly through the end of this semester. And I'll let Chris talk more about subsequent session plans if you'd like to. But we did the first one, and I think it went well, and I'm excited to keep going with it. I wanted to also thank everybody who spoke about Clean Slate. I'm excited for this resolution and for the potential of this New York State law. I think that it will, as was stated, do a lot of good for a lot of people. And I also want to note that it is Native American Heritage Month. It's a national holiday, or nationally recognized designation. And just a few quick facts. There are 8 federally recognized tribes in New York State. Nearly 60,000 indigenous people live in New York State, according to census data. And I want to note that the people and communities whose homelands Beacon is situated on have been displaced to reservations as far as Wisconsin, Oklahoma, Southern Ontario, and elsewhere. It's important to recognize both the history of Native peoples in this land and also the vibrant present cultures that exist in this country. Finally, my office hours this month will be this coming Sunday from 4 to 6 across the street at Pole Hill Park. As always, I encourage people to come and talk to me about anything, and hope to see folks out there. I think that's it for me for now.
All right. I have a few things tonight, so please pardon the length of my report. First off, you may have heard tomorrow is an election of some importance. Ward 4 voters, your polling place is the Memorial Building on Main Street, and polls are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., so please get out there and vote if you haven't already. Next up, on November 20th, from 11 to 1 o'clock, I'll be hosting, along with Yvette Valdez-Smith, who's the minority leader in the Dutchess County Legislature, we'll be hosting a Ward 4 Community Forum. So it's a kind of an open mic session where everybody can come and bring their ideas and their complaints and their concerns. That's not in a council setting. So again, that's 11 to 1 at the Memorial Building on November 20th, Sunday, November 20th. I wanted to check in because I think we're at the point where we were supposed to get an update, Chris, on Airbnb data. I think we wanted to look at it at the end of October, early November. I don't know where you guys are at, but I'm just thought I'd bring that up again. And then as far as other laws that we're working on, we have a couple environmental laws. One, we were looking at leaf blowers, noise pollution, small gasoline engines. The resolution of that conversation with the council was that we would solicit feedback from the CAC. I don't believe I've seen the feedback, though I'm told that the feedback might have been completed, so perhaps we could re-up this conversation. I'd also like to hear from Keenan Bean on the status of their research into what more we can do to protect water bodies and wetlands within the city of Beacon, in addition to some of the ideas from New York State that I shared with the council. And then I'd also like to introduce a new local law that addresses climate change, potentially for discussion next week if we can. So several folks over the last couple of years have been working on climate legislation for the city of Beacon, looking at how we can ban new gas hookups to new construction and significant renovations. That's something that's preempted by the state of New York, but our objective remains the same, which is that we want to stop, with all the new construction that's going on, we don't want all of them to be gas-burning infrastructure. And so what I'd like to do is propose to the council that next workshop, Paloma and I present a law that the two of us have been working on, along with Tom Wright, who's here in the audience. Perhaps Tom could join the conversation. If we could just have 10 minutes on the next workshop to present an idea that while we're preempted from banning gasoline hookups to new construction, we can, with using our code, regulate appliances. And we can regulate gas appliances. We can write regulations that forbid gas appliances, which would achieve the same aims. So, just like to see if we can have that discussion next week, please. And that would be a presentation from Paloma and I, alongside Tom Wright of the CAC, who the three of us worked on the legislation. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Just a couple of things from me. As Dan said, we have elections. You haven't had a chance to participate in early voting. The polls will be open tomorrow from 6 to 9 p.m. I represent Ward 1. There's actually 2 different places to vote in Ward 1, Tompkins Hose Firehouse or Rombout Middle School. But rather than get into the details, just a reminder that everyone can look it up for themselves if they have the internet on Voter Lookup. www.elections.newyork.gov, and if you search for it as well, that'll come up, because you might not necessarily know where your place is. And then I'll be having office hours on Saturday, November 19th from 1 to 3 p.m., also in Pole Hill Park. Thanks.
Thank you, Molly. I want to start off by thanking everybody that's just been approaching me on the street, reaching out to me, and talking to me wherever I am, and taking the opportunity to have me meet you where you're at. I am so glad that people have been finding ways to reach out to me and scheduling meetings with me, and keep your eye on the city website for when I post my office hours. But in the meantime, anytime you see me out and about, you're more than welcome to stop me. You can also schedule a meeting with me anytime through my booking link, which I've mentioned before, and I will gladly mention again, but feel free to send me an email as well, and we can schedule a time if you want to chat. Today was a really lovely day, and the past couple of weekends we've had gorgeous weather, 75 degrees in November in New York, and honestly that's kind of terrifying. That being said, I'm so glad to be on a council that's working toward mitigating climate change on the local level, and I look forward to discussing Dan and Paloma's climate initiatives in next week's workshop. Jumping toward the budget, I don't support the $4,000 budget line item listed as youth programs found on page 12 on the budget under police. It's my understanding that this funding is for a police youth academy, and I don't see that as something the city needs to be investing in at this time. I think that we can all agree that safety and the well-being of the people in the city is, our friends, our families, and our neighbors is something that should be prioritized. And while a youth police academy would scratch an interest in the carceral system and policing for a select few young individuals, I don't think or it does nothing to address the public safety needs that we're presently facing in our community. There are a lot of people in our city whose material needs aren't being met, and I would much rather focus that $4,000 in making sure that people have what they need, because that's what safety is. Now, this council still hasn't heard from the Police Advisory Committee, but I can't, of sound mind, invest in any reforms that or that aren't people first based initiatives focused in prevention and humanity. I know this council suggested not investing in a police academy without also investing in other emergency service youth academies, but I can't support this budget line item at this time or in the foreseeable future. I believe there are far more pressing items that directly impact the safety of people right now, including housing safety, traffic safety, pedestrian safety, and food security. And as a council, I think we should be prioritizing those. And on another note, I joined this council in part to also address the housing crisis that the city is facing, and I'm very proud of the renter protections that this council passed earlier this year. I say that knowing that there's so much more work to be done to make housing equitable, accessible, and stable in the city. But I'd also like to start working towards solutions for another piece of the housing puzzle that I don't think our council has had the opportunity to address, and that's our unhoused population. I've seen a lot of municipalities and larger cities attack the unhoused populations by attempting to funnel them through the carceral system or push them somewhere else. Everyone deserves access to safe and stable housing, and I want that to be a reality for all people in Beacon. Over the summer, I had the opportunity to go to Denver, Colorado, and talk to their city council and respective municipal and independent agencies to see firsthand what they're doing to address homelessness, and it's very different from the approaches that we're seeing happening in Los Angeles and New York City and other larger municipalities. And while I recognize that every city that I've mentioned has a budget that's exponentially larger than ours, I'm not suggesting any infrastructural overhaul tonight, but as a council, I would like for us to start addressing this, and I think I know where I want to start. As a municipality, I would like to make hostile architecture illegal in the city of Beacon. And if you're unfamiliar with it, It's infrastructure that's designed with the intent of preventing someone from laying or existing in spaces that are stereotypically we see unhoused people resting. I've seen this as spikes under bridges or under underpasses or overpasses rather, and I've seen this as like bars on public benches that prevent people from lying down. And this type of architecture doesn't remove homelessness, but rather pushes our unhoused populations to seek shelter on people's private residences. And the only thing it really removes is our humanity. I don't think there's any hostile architecture in our city right now, and because of that, I think that banning this kind of architecture in our city code is an achievable action that the city can take to begin addressing the much larger issue of our unhoused population and homelessness here in the city. And like I said, I would like to very much continue this conversation, and I'd be happy to work with the lawyers, work with Chris to figure all of this out. But yeah, sorry, I know that was a lot, but that's what I have for tonight. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Justice. I would be interested in hearing more about legislation around hostile architecture as well. That's very interesting. Thank you for bringing it up. And Paloma and Dan, Tom, thanks for the work that you're doing in writing legislation that can keep our emissions down with new buildings. I just wanted to remind everyone my office hours are Wednesdays. You can make an appointment with me, wlongno@beaconny.gov. And just want to say thanks to everyone in the city who helped, and all the volunteers and all the artists and musicians who made the Beacon Bonfire a couple of days pretty darn fun. And that's all for me. Thanks.
I can be even simpler because people have covered a lot of ground. Thank you all for being here. That's all I got. Chris?
I have a couple updates on work that we're doing that I think might be of interest. Our street repaving is more than halfway through. We thought we'd be done by now, but there were some constraints at the asphalt plant that limited the rate at which we could get trucks of asphalt. So we hope to finish up by Thursday of this week or Friday. And thank you for your continued patience as we close roads for brief amounts of time to allow that asphalt to set up. I also wanted to give an update on Hannah Lane, Fishkill Avenue. Again, thank you for your patience while that area was under construction. We hope to finish the paving at Hannah Lane and close up that project by the end of the week. And that was the replacement of water mains on Fishkill Avenue and Teller Avenue in anticipation of next year's major road reconstruction. You'll see we're putting out to bid on Wednesday the first phase of the firehouse project. So we have asbestos-containing materials that need abatement. That will be going out, and I hope to bring that contract to you for discussion on December 12th and a vote on the 19th so we can start right after the new year. The last announcement I have is that we are doing our bulk leaf pickup for the next few weeks. So this is the only time of year that we send the vacuum truck out to pick up piles of leaves on your sidewalk or on the side of your property. Normally, during the spring, if you want to do that, you have to put it in bags. So the next few weeks, if you want to leave leaves out by the edge of your property, we have 2 trucks that are going to be going around the city picking those up. So
when do those 2 trucks go around, Chris?
I think we're going to start on Wednesday. So some of the staff that we've had on paving, we're going to shift over. So our hope is Wednesday. And city offices, just a reminder, are closed tomorrow for Election Day and closed Friday for Veterans Day. In response to a couple questions, I don't have updates on Airbnb. We have a new building inspector, and there was a pile left when he arrived, and he's working through that. So we hope to have his review of our program and his recommendations soon. The CAC feedback on the leaf blower regulation is in, and it will be in your packet for next week. And thank you to the CAC and Sergey for doing a really thoughtful job on that. And the gas hookups, I think our attorneys want to look into what Ithaca did. So we have a pretty full agenda next week. We might want to, I don't know when they'll be back, but they want to look into how Ithaca set up their law before we have a discussion.
Sorry, mine is a little unrelated, but are there any updates on the recreation survey? Is that closed?
It was closed today, yes, and I don't have a final number, but we were right around 1,000 responses. So Mark Price, our recreation director, will be working with our consultant now to compile those and bring you back some kind of intelligible report on what we got out of that.
Right. So Chris, I'd still like to have the conversation about the gas appliances next week. I just want to emphasize we're not talking about gas hookups, we're just talking about gas appliances, and the city has the authority to regulate appliances in our building code. I know because I was forced to buy a garbage disposal when I built my house. I don't know, I mean, we can look at what Ithaca did, but I'm pretty sure they did the same thing, looking at appliances, as did New York City, who's subject to a different set of laws, but I think this is well within our code, or well within our authority.
Okay. Let's start up our resolutions. Oh, unless, Drew, do you have anything?
No, I have nothing to add. I think that, as the city continues the conversation about the gas appliances, our office will still be doing some research. This is a newer area. We're facing new building code and energy code updates. So, we'll be on top of it as well.
Yeah, Drew, just for context, this was an approach that Nick suggested back in 2020 to me. So you might want to check in with him.
Understood. Thank you very much, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
So the first resolution is approving a side letter agreement with the PBA regarding flexibility of vacation days. Can I get a motion in a second, and then Chris can talk us through that?
Motion.
Second.
Okay. Molly and Ren. Chris?
So this proposed side letter agreement amends the collective bargaining agreement that we signed with the PBA. The impetus for it was that we are running well above where we should be on overtime, mainly because we've had multiple injuries. We're still losing time to COVID. We had a military reservist have to get called up. And because we have 4 vacancies in the department that we are trying to fill, and I hope to bring somebody to executive session next week for you to meet, we continue to have an issue with overtime, and we will through at least 2023. So what we've tried to do is figure out how we can work with the PBA so that rather than them taking vacation days at the end of the year, basically burning them so that they don't lose them, which causes us overtime, that we could buy them back and give them greater flexibility. So this side letter agreement does 2 things. One, it allows them to take individual vacation days without limitation. Right now, if an officer is there less than 7 years, they can only do that with 5 vacation days, and then they have to take it in blocks of 5. Similarly, for somebody who's been there longer than 7 years, they can only take 10 individual days, and then the other 10 or whatever they've carried over, they have to take in blocks. And what we found is at the end of the year, if they've already used their individual days, they end up taking 5 days where they might have just needed 1. So we heard from them that, that's one way of stopping kind of burning vacation time at the end of the year. The other is offering a limited buyback of up to 10 vacation days in 2022 and 2023. And that way we're basically paying regular time for those hours instead of having to backfill that vacation time that's used with overtime. So these are 2 things that we think we're again not going to solve it, but they're going to help us manage it. And we are managing events. We've been The chief and I meet on a weekly basis about overtime. We go over what's proposed. He's done a great job in reducing the overtime, but we're probably going to have to come back to you in the next few weeks with another budget amendment to cover what we expect to pay through the end of the year. So this will amend the collective bargaining agreement, and it was passed by the PBA earlier last week.
Is there any reason why the flexibility on vacation time isn't extended throughout the remaining life of the contract? Why it's just for next year? I kind of get how the buyout we might want to limit to 1 year, but the flexibility, I'm curious, is there benefits for people taking 5 blocks in terms of scheduling police, and we don't want them to take them 1 day at a time as much as this allows for next year?
It was just to have a very limited side letter agreement without opening that broader issue, which apparently has, again, if we were up and fully staffed, we might not want the police to take individual days, because it makes your scheduling harder, and that's why it was originally, I think it looks like it was put in originally by the city.
Okay.
You know, so again, it's something we can bring up when we redo the broader contract, but we were just looking for how do we mitigate, you know, the overrun and overtime right now.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any comments on the side letter agreement? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, that's the first one. The second one is approving the sale of 9 Rock Hill Road, which was a tax foreclosure. Can I get a motion and a second on that? We'll put it on the table.
Motion?
Second?
Dan and Paloma. And Chris, you're going to talk us through that?
Yes, so this was the only in-rem tax foreclosure we had from 2019. We normally are able to work out payment plans with property owners, and we've actually not had any properties since then get into as much trouble. This was a property that we ended up taking in June of 2021 for back taxes. There were title issues that needed to be cleared, so we've been working for over a year to clear up title issues. The good news is that in doing so, the cost, the bid that we got was actually higher. So we are proposing to sell this to the highest offer, which is Marcelo and Victoria Mastrantuano for $262,500. Our net is going to be less because we do have to pay off a second mortgage of $50,000 and a commission of $10,500. So this nets $202,000. And we're happy to get it off our books. It's been a long time that we've had this.
Any discussion?
I was just curious, and if there's not a quick answer to this, it's fine, how many of these properties we've had this year or in the past couple of years? One, this is it?
Yeah, this is it.
Okay.
And we had, this was for back taxes ending in 2019. So they hadn't paid for 3 years as of 2019. We don't have any for 2020. They're all on payment plans.
So the process we have in place, if you think about it, back taxes are very rarely the value of a home. And so when someone gives up a home for back taxes, that's a problem. And so we have a set of procedures that we put in place several years ago to give taxpayers or homeowners, property owners, every opportunity to pay it off. And that resulted in fewer foreclosures, which is actually a good thing, although the city doesn't make as much money, but that shouldn't be how we make our money. So, and that's been going down. In contrast, you know, other local cities have large number of parcels that go into foreclosure that end up on the city rolls, and we just don't have that problem. So, we used to actually.
And the condition of this property is very poor. This is either a tear down or a gut rehab.
It's a Ward 1 property, and I've walked by it, so I'm aware of it.
It's pretty bad.
And as far as the commission goes, how do we choose who's representing the city and the state?
We did an RFP over a year ago. Yeah.
And that RFP?
And we got a good commission, which was like 4%.
And that hires the person for, or the agency for a year or for?
Well, normally it would just be until you have offers. We use the same realtor who brought in the original high offer because there was no fault of her own for this delay. It was a title issue.
Oh, it's per property. The RFP is, okay.
Yeah, I mean, like, we had done 5 in REM in 2021, and I
Okay.
think we used 3 different realtors. So when we put it out, we split it up amongst the people that submitted requests to do so.
Thank you.
Chris, sometime, well, it's been a while, but the last few times that there's been a sale of reclaimed property, folks have kind of raised that we're doing backroom dealing and we're, enriching our buddies. Can you give any kind of assurances to the public about, can you give assurances to the public about the process and how it's fair and how, you're doing everything above board and?
Yeah, I mean, so these are listed on the multiple listing service, MLS. We basically put it out, and our realtor brings in all of the offers. We go with the highest offer. So in this case, like in 2021, we had such a number of them, we did sealed bids. But we found that actually didn't get us the best price, that sometimes being able to go back and say, okay, to all the bidders, give us your highest and best at this point. And because the market's changed, there are bidding wars now. So I will tell you, this was the highest offer. It was offered publicly for 45 or 60 days. And again, it's a difficult property. Like, not everybody, you can't get a mortgage for a property that you can't live in. So this had to be a cash deal as well. So not only do they do an offer, but it has to be a cash offer.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah.
And once something goes on MLS, the multiple listing service, that means everybody in the universe is aware, right? There isn't anything closed about it. So.
Yeah, in fact, you could see the old furniture that we forgot to clean up on the MLS. So sometimes it's a little too transparent.
All right, any other discussion?
I had I guess a topic to bring up, and I don't have any problem with this particular sale, and I do understand that we very, very rarely are in this situation where we're in a foreclosure, but my understanding of what other municipalities who do have more foreclosures sometimes do is create a land bank out of these properties to make sure that they're going into the public interest. And I don't know that that's the right approach for Beacon, given how few properties this would pertain to, but wanted to just acknowledge that that idea is out there, as many constituents have asked me about it and have been interested in it. But one idea that did come up recently in a CAC meeting was the idea of a sustainability trust. To be able, for the city to be able to have a fund of money to be able to purchase small tracts of land as they become available for public projects like the Greenway Trail or other sustainability projects. And I'm curious if there is a way or methodology to take the money that is the city will be receiving, which I realize is a fairly modest amount of money, from this sale and designate it for, or an equivalent amount of money for a long-term project. This is sort of perhaps a parallel idea to what Dan was talking about in our last meeting around a fund for sidewalks, which I recognize we decided should just be in the capital plan, but wanted to put that question out there.
So I'll give you a little history. We did discuss land bank at one point. We never have enough to make a difference or for it to be of value in the process. If you compare to other cities, those that have a program are dealing with dozens of properties and not, ones and twos. So it, we did talk about it. It really didn't make any sense financially.
And they're limited in number by the state, so you have to apply, and there's only so many that have been authorized by New York State law. Because we did one up in Ulster County, and we came up against, we actually had to combine it with Kingston's because we couldn't get a new one. So these really are designed for municipalities that have dozens or scores of properties, so that they can aggregate them and kind of sell them as a whole redevelopment package.
We can put aside money and spend money this way without calling it a land bank, right? I mean, we can put money in a trust.
I'll answer the second question. I was trying to answer just the first one, but this is a very little bit of money in terms of the budgets that we run. We would like to put it back towards the capital projects we have. We have $41 million in capital projects that are running this year and next year. We don't have any extra money to buy little pieces of property right now. We have two massive projects that are coming up next year that are basically legacy projects. You have Fishkill Teller Avenue that's almost $10 million and has been sitting around for 21 years. You have a firehouse that right now is at 11 million, but it's probably going to escalate really quickly because every time we turn around, the price of materials has gone up. So if anything, I'm going to need this money towards the escalation in costs on the firehouse. So again, I think we're at this coming year is going to be a crunch, and to the extent that we can fund those things out of fund balance and not debt, the bond rates have gone up. They've doubled. So to the extent that we can use monies that we've gotten from the proceeds of these in-rem rather than go into the bond market, it really helps us out.
So the way that we've chipped at our infrastructure investments is, this sort of activity, right? It might only be a couple $100,000 here. It might be, something in a budget left over, but that's consistently what we've done. In order to kind of fiscally allocate appropriately, that's what the capital plan is for, right? It's the only time that you see everything all together. And that's the best place to make choices where, it's like, what am I balancing? What am I giving up? What am I getting for this? If we just pick them one at a time, we're going to end up not seeing the big picture, right? So I would just suggest that let's just do it at capital time. Sorry. Back on sale of Rock Hill Road. Any other comments? All right. All in favor of approving the sale of 9 Rock Hill Road?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Third one is a resolution supporting the Clean Slate Act.
Sorry, I noticed, I meant to bring it up, sorry, a quick typo in the last, let it be further resolved. I think it says city administer on page 100 of the packet, that first line.
And you meant it to read city minister, right? Oh, okay.
Just so that quick thing, sorry.
Thank you. Are you looking on? Oh, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Unless you want that to be your new title, Chris.
We'll work on it.
I thought there was a verb,
Administer.
not a noun.
It's got a ring to it, Molly.
Anyway, how about a motion and a second on a resolution supporting the Clean Slate Act?
Motion. Second.
So Paloma and Wren. Do you want to do a quick intro just for the audience?
Sure. So what this resolution is doing is the city expressing support for a state law that is currently pending in the state legislature, which would, when a person has completed their jail or prison time, has completed their probation or parole, and is not on the sex offender registry, and also has no subsequent New York State convictions or New York State pending charges, it would automatically seal their criminal record after 1 year for misdemeanors or 3 years for felonies. It will automatically expunge those records after 5 years for misdemeanors or 7 years for felonies. There is still no access for most civil purposes under sealing or expungement. However, these records are still visible to courts, and on some licensing background checks, including for the purchase of firearms, to become a police officer or a federal employee. And why this matters in a nutshell is that this would effectively end something that is termed perpetual punishment, where individuals who have already served their time and have clean records continue to be unfairly penalized by society for past mistakes. This comes up in employment, this comes up with housing. And in addition to, as some individuals in the audience said, this is about prioritizing our shared humanity as people in the face of a criminal legal system that often in many ways strips people of their humanity. But as also a matter of public policy, this has benefits for the economy. When people are able to fully participate in society, everybody benefits, both in terms of having a shared community of care and in terms of economic benefits and pursuits. So I won't read, the whole resolution, but that is my summary in a nutshell, and I hope that we all support it.
Thanks. I had one thing. I was sort of surprised that it didn't pass the legislature, and I wanted to understand why, so I just Googled it. And it passed the Senate, but it didn't pass the Assembly, which struck me as a little surprising. I called our Assembly member's office just to inquire, what was going on, and what I heard was that there was some concerns about specific circumstances where an employer couldn't ask a question that was highly relevant to the job. And the two examples that I was given was, not being able to ask a potential candidate for a bus driver position whether they've had any DUIs. Or the inability to ask someone who would become an accountant or a bookkeeper whether they'd had a prior offense for embezzlement. Those were the two examples I was given. And what I heard was that that sort of kept the bill from moving forward, and there may be some amendments in those areas. Those struck me as kind of worth doing questions. So I just want to propose some language that is limited just to that one item that I heard. So in the final, therefore be it resolved, where it calls on us to pass it, I would just wanted to add something like, with any appropriate amendments to clarify what specific employer inquiries might be permissible under what circumstances. Because apparently what I heard from the Assembly member's office was that was the issue. So I just want to add that language. Otherwise, I'm supportive, and I think it will pass the next time. I think what I was hearing was there may be some changes right in that area.
Is that language necessarily necessary? I mean, would the council consider? I mean, I think this council has support for this bill, but yeah, this resolution. So whether or not they do make the changes, I think adding that language makes it sound like we support this if those changes happen, not just whether or not the changes happen.
So you could say, including any appropriate amendments. That would say that if they made amendments, you would still support it as opposed to oppose it.
I was going to propose just that, Lee.
Yeah, I was thinking that was where you were going.
I just was trying to, because it becomes more meaningful if our members get something that kind of addresses what was the issue. I'm just trying to work the language.
Yeah, along those lines, I'm fine and trust our representatives to do that kind of negotiating that is still ongoing in order to try to get it passed.
Okay.
And this or the most appropriate
Let me try the language. So in other words, in the very last whereas, after the words Clean Slate Act, there would be a comma, and then including any appropriate amendments to clarify what specific employer inquiries might be permissible under what circumstances.
And I was saying let's do the latter version, which is the amendments, and not get into what the amendments are about.
Oh, okay. Do you want to just say just any amendments?
With amendments.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Yeah.
Do you want it to be specific to that one issue or not?
No,
Okay.
'cause
Why
there
don't we
there might
just-
also be other issues too.
Yeah,
that
any
I'm
appropriate
not-
amendment sounds good.
Okay, so how about, I'll make that motion, is that okay? To add the words, "and any appropriate amendments," right after the words "Clean Slate Act.
Do you have thoughts, Bill?
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'm fine with that amendment, if that's what the council agrees on. But I will say that in my opinion, having a DUI on your record, especially if you have not had the same issue for many years, should not count against you. That is sort of the purpose of the law. And same for other misdemeanors or other smaller crimes. And so I personally would not support those amendments and those changes. But I do, at the end of the day, agree with my council members that it is up to our representatives on the state level to make those determinations, and the law passed is better than not.
Okay.
I'm content with the resolution as is. I think we could just move forward with it as is. That's my 2 cents.
So there was a motion, is there a second, first of all? I think the words are, "and any appropriate amendments."
Mayor, did you have a motion for the original?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're good, okay.
So there's a motion and a second, any discussion? And it's the 3 words, "and any," 4 words, "any appropriate amendments."
I just want to express why it doesn't create too much of a problem for me adding this, because really what this resolution is doing is communicating to our elected officials in Albany that this is something that we want to get done. And I don't think, for example, Assemblymember Jacobson is going to be looking at the wording of our resolution saying like, oh, Beacon supported it without amendments or with amendments, so I can't do this. I think really we just want to get this to him and let him know that this is a matter of urgency for us.
Okay. Let's do the amendment. Any votes in favor of the amendment, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, so amendment carries, and then all in favor of the resolution as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Cool, thank you, I appreciate it. I said I was just trying to figure out what was the issue.
No, it's important, and part of the point of this is to get, as Dan said, to get the message to our assembly members that we support this, and we can do that in the form of resolution, and we can do that in the form of talking to them. But I think the resolution is an important statement, public statement.
Okay. Yes, thank you for bringing it forward. The 4th item is setting a public hearing, and this is on stop signs on South Brett and parking on West Church Street. So I need a motion and a second to set a public hearing.
Motion.
Second?
All right, that's Justice and Dan. Ben, are you going to tell us anything about it, or is that clear enough?
Yes, I am. Just briefly put on the record what we're talking about here. Good evening, council. Pull it up on the screen as well. As I said last time when we workshopped this, moment.
And while Ben's doing this, we will fix the gap in parking on the resolution.
Every time I see Ben's name, he has a different title. Now he's the secretary to the Parking and Traffic Safety Committee.
Yes. He wears many hats, Ben.
You should see my resume. Okay. So there was 2 recommendations made by the Traffic Safety Committee over the course of a couple meetings. The first was to make this intersection of South Brett and Beacon Street a 4-way stop. As of now, it is a 2-way stop. And there was a couple different residents that had reached out about that, and the committee was unanimously in favor of doing so. A second recommendation is an older one that we have brought to you once before that was put back to be adjusted after a previous public hearing, and that was to update the parking restrictions at the intersection of West Church and Cross Street. The main concern here was having fire department emergency vehicle access. Since our last public hearing on the matter, the fire department did measure the intersection to figure out what sort of clearance we need, and that was 50 feet on the north side of the street along West Church. I noted here a few existing parking restrictions that were not otherwise amended, so those will continue. Anything that's notated in yellow And on the south side, West Church, the law will specify that there's a 30-foot, or as drafted right now, would specify that there's a 30-foot no parking radius from that intersection. That is the standard state citywide for all intersections, but for the sake of clarity, it was added here as well, just to make sure that it was clear in the law. So that's where we stand with the recommendations, and right now we're just asking you to vote on whether or not you want to set a public hearing.
In the, a couple things. In the resolution, it suggests we're setting a public hearing for today. So we might want to change the date to another day. I assume the 21st.
That would be the 21st, yes.
Great.
That would be amended.
And also, I think there was a question, I wasn't at the October 24th workshop, but I am curious to answer the question of whether or not the residents around these intersections will or won't be notified of how the city approaches these kinds of proposed changes. I went door to door last time, so I might do that again anyway, but I was just curious what the answer is.
Yeah, if there is no mechanism, I can do the South Brett Street door to door.
If I remember correctly, because we did ask this question in workshop, all of these people are aware and have been part of a conversation, but that there is not an official mechanism for notifying people. In this particular case, everyone is aware, but there is not an official mechanism.
That's correct. I don't have any mechanism that I have notified those residents.
Okay, great. Thank you for confirming, Ben.
And I will be republishing the resolution with the correct date momentarily.
And also, take out the extra space in parking, please.
Yep.
Just rubbing Chris the wrong way.
Parking.
And if I can add, I just, we went in and we made this local law. We took the opportunity to clean up some of the things happening on West Church Street. There is a lot of provisions that I think maybe have been forgotten. So that's why we have the update language for the time restrictions, and you'll see the other references on West Church Street. So it should be clear for all residents in the city of Beacon or anyone traveling in Beacon what the rules are for West Church Street.
I appreciate that, Drew. There's a big history and continues to be an issue with how parking should best work on that street. It's so close to Main Street, it's so close to the train station that those who live on there have lots of thoughts about moving forward. So I appreciate you cleaning up where we are now, even if we choose to try to amend things in the future.
Okay, we all set? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That's for setting a public hearing. Last one is setting another public hearing regarding the 2023 Dutchess County Community Development Block Grant Program. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second.
Paloma and Justice. And Chris, you give us the two-sentence version?
Sure. So as we talked about in workshop 2 weeks ago, these monies are allocated by the county. There are federal funds through HUD, Housing and Urban Development. Each year we get an allocation of about 15% of the county's share, and they're opening the application process for 2023. So we actually have to get a letter of intent in this month and our application in next month. They also require a public hearing be done. And just so you have context, these monies have to be used for an allowable purpose in an allowable area. And our map of the neighborhoods that are eligible for this continues to shrink. So this past year we did new sidewalks on South Avenue by the South Avenue Park. We also did the sewer main work. Part of that was funded by the CDBG from the year before. So the public hearing is to generate any ideas on this. We have some ideas. We've been vetting with a housing complex on South Avenue about doing some more sidewalk work in that area where they're pretty rough. So, but we do need to do a public hearing.
Chris, can you remind us what 15% is this year? I think you knew the number in the last...
We got about 186,000 this year.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's not a lot of sidewalk. We may have to put extra money in if we do some of the projects that we're thinking about.
Okay, any other discussion? This is for setting a public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Don't go away. We're going to do approval of the minutes. I need a motion and a second to approve the minutes
Motion.
of October 17th.
Second.
Molly and Paloma. Any corrections, additions, typos,
He listened.
administers? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed? All right. This is the second opportunity for public comment. If you did not comment at the first one, other than in the public hearing for the budget, go right ahead.
Okay, so does anyone know what the allowable uses for the community block is? We know how much money now, right? But do you know? And there we go. So when we talk about intellectual expansion, did you know that you can use it for bathrooms in South Avenue basketball court? Did you know you can use it for youth sports programs? Did you know you could use it for sports equipment for underprivileged children to participate on a loan basis? The easiest thing about the infrastructure improvement grant is everyone in America is building sidewalks because it's easy and there's no pre-planning and engineering out of our educational institutions and into our communities. Project Ready. How much time did we spend doing a recreation program and not thinking about investing in the children in lifelong lessons and the benefits of sports? Are redoing used sidewalks more important than our children? Now, again, I apologize. If it seems confrontational, it's not really meant to be personal. But you have the tools, you have the toolbox, you have the vessel to advance the community in a way that it isn't possible in like so many communities across America. Again, I'm not personalizing this. I would, however, love to, Teresa, someday make some presentations at the Howland Center. I got in a little bit of dispute with Teresa. I've been trying for years to make some presentations. Someone said, hey, who cares? I said, well, listen, not for nothing, but I kind of think you could build a wing by the time I get done. And you will soon see and understand exactly what I'm talking about. My life mission is about ready to be revealed. And the whole point is the identity of what you've done here and what you will continue to do tomorrow and in the coming years will come into greater play and greater purpose and greater review. And I genuinely pray that you rise to the challenge and to make this coming period of time as beneficial in your service to the citizens of Beacon. And I thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing anyone else in the physical audience, anyone in the electronic audience that hasn't made a comment before?
No hands raised online.
I will entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss agreements and then to come out and adjourn.
Motion to go into an executive session to discuss agreements and then conduct.
Litigation and contracts.
To discuss
Thank you, sir.
litigation and a motion to go into executive session to discuss.
That's the administrator.
Litigation and contracts and discuss no further business thereafter.
So we have 3 topics for executive session?
No, we have 2. Says the administrator.
So Molly was
Second.
the motion, Dan was the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
I'm just so glad you're back.